I'm glad that, from a VFD standpoint, working through this process in a production system, I think is a lot more seamless than what, especially a mixed animal practitioner that's got to work with several different clients with different goals and different health challenges, and working with, different species as well. They're going to also have to implement the same rules. So it should be, I'm going to kind of go through the example of how we're approaching it as a system, and as, it's kind of a one approach type mindset. And I guess before I get started, is there anybody in the FDA? Can you raise your hand if you're with the FDA? Perfect. All right, great. That joke worked last year too. So anyways, kind of the overview of what I'm going to talk about is within our production system, our antibiotic decision making and kind of in context with valid VCPR and how we go about making decisions on antibiotic use, especially with not just feed medication, but also water and injectable for our system. Talk about exactly how we're planning and kind of walk through how we're implementing the VFD and what our program looks like as we move into January 1st. And then also talk just a little bit about prescription water medication use as some of those regulations change, and I think some looking at that and how we've applied some things and how that might be a benefit to producers and practitioners as well. And so I'll start kind of with the bottom bullet point. When it comes to antibiotic use, this is kind of the quick snippet that sticks in my mind is, try to use as little as possible, but as much as necessary. So I've never had, whether I was in private practice or in production system, I haven't had either my boss or clients ever come to me and ask me to work on a strategy of how we can spend more money on antibiotics. I think everybody's goal is, first of all, do what we need to do to keep pigs healthy, but try to limit use and limit that cost. And really, really what the goal should be is trying to keep our pigs healthy, trying to keep our food supply safe, and trying to make sure we protect those tools so we can continue to use them in the future and they remain effective in the future. And I think really what it gets down to is, when it comes to all this discussion is really what the FDA and consumers want is to make sure that there's veterinary oversight so they know that people are using things responsibly. And so I think that overall is a good strategy, and it's a matter of, as Paul said, there's a lot of changes over years, and it's how do we get there as a system. So talking a little bit to start with about veterinary oversight, I put our team up here on the board at Iowa Select Farms, and so we have 5 veterinarians, and we all kind of have some specific duties. Shamus works with all of our multiplication stuff, and also with some of the commercial sow farms in southern Iowa. Cassandra is our director of production well-being for animal welfare, animal well-being as part of our agreement with JBS, and also so her team makes sure that all our animals are taken care of properly. We're doing the right things for them, and also still works with some sow farms in our central finishing region. Katie works with about 13, 14 sow farms in central Iowa, northern Iowa, and also does our eastern finishing region. And then Lynn does our western finishing region. And so all of us work together. We have sow farms that get gilts from some of the same flows. We have pigs that come into all the different finishing regions that might be from multiple flows. It's most important that we all work together. Everybody is engaged. Everybody understands what's going on in the sow system. Everybody understands what's going on with the pig flows in each other's division. And we really have quite a bit of crossover and backup between two, helping each other out. And so from the standpoint of veterinary oversight and VCPRs, we feel like we really have a good team and good coverage in that situation. For diagnostic utilization, just like any production system or veterinary clinic or client, one of the biggest things we do is diagnostics to determine what we need to do from a medication standpoint. And so we utilize several different diagnostic labs, whether that's for routine health monitoring or for diagnosing problems in specific sites or maybe a trend in a flow. But we do use Iowa State, University of Minnesota, South Dakota State. We have an internal PCR lab that we do a lot of our own PRRS testing at, and then also use Newport Labs for some things as well. It's important not only, and kind of going back a little bit to the health and diagnostic discussion, every Monday morning we have a meeting health meeting with our production staff and with our veterinary services team, and we talked through, you know, what the testing from the previous week, health challenges and flows, what trends we're seeing, and it's great. Everybody gets input. Everybody's on the same page. It allows us to use that diagnostic information in kind of an engaging way, and to have discussions on what's going on in the flow. And a lot of times at that time, that's when we'll discuss a lot of our medication decisions or reevaluate our medication decisions. So we're really looking at that every week as a team, both as with a production staff, just like a producer would be for a private practice, and our veterinary team. All of our stuff from the state veterinary diagnostic labs gets all compiled into the LabLink HIMSS system, and so we can use that. I pulled just a kind of example here, something I pulled a couple weeks ago, looking at some salmonella diagnostics in our system and trends. And so you can look, and you can look for the kind of the number or the quantity you've been diagnosing a disease, and you can look at different trends, whether you're looking at the flow of pigs to evaluate if you've got more issues in certain flows than others, the age of the pig you're seeing it at, age within a flow, and so you can really start to look and see where trends are popping up. Even if we got multiple veterinarians submitting potentially even to multiple diagnostic labs, we can compile those trends and look at them. So that's a tool that helps us, look at, do we need to do something different from a vaccination standpoint here or a medication standpoint there. In addition to the diagnostics we do have a couple research facilities that are designated that we use for a lot of internal company research, and they're set up with feed logic systems. They have we have the ability to really do accurate feed trials. It allows us to take specific flows of pigs or pigs we have interest in looking at different decisions. So if we're looking at utilizing antibiotics different or using a different treatment protocol, even we've looked at some different injectable protocols, feed med protocols, it allows us to go in and accurately assess, are we getting measurable benefits in these flows of pigs? Are we getting the response that we want to see? And then we also utilize research that come to a meeting like this, other groups that do research that can be applied to our system. We'll also use that type of information when we make medication decisions based off all the diagnostic and disease trends we're seeing. We have 39 sow farms, and so we could potentially have up to 39 different flows. Typically what we try to do is we try to single source flows as much as possible. So we try to keep it a one-for-one. Of course, there's always other things that come up, whether that's health challenges, space balance. And so when we do commingle flows, we try to do as much as we can by, really, we do all the time do it by what is the gilt source going into that farm and what is the health status of that farm. So if we've got two sow farms that are close together with the same gilt source and they both have broke with the same strain of PRRS, that might be two flows we flow together, but we're trying to try to match up those health statuses as much as possible. But they do change on a regular basis based off some of those changes in health statuses. We might have to pair a flow that broke with PRRS out. We might have to do some things if space gets tight certain times of the year. But when we do that, we always do it in the context of the best health decision for the pig. But it does change our flow dynamic, and it changes how we would consider a medication program for that flow versus another flow. And that's a dynamic that is changing throughout the year. Although that all changes, we don't go and make wild changes to our feed medication programs. We try to keep that pretty standard. We try to attack the problems we know we have consistent challenges with. For the emergency type situations where health challenges arise unexpectedly, or usually that's going to be targeted with injectable or water medication. So within a system, and it was same for both systems I've been in, we don't there's very little changes that occur in the feed medication program. There might be some small changes between flows, but overall that remains fairly static. So from a VFD process, what are our goals as a system as we try to incorporate the VFD process into Iowa Select Farms feeding programs? And so number one is it's got to be an efficient use of everyone's time and resources. So whether that's the staff that do our feed ordering and feed budgets, nutritionists, the veterinarians, other administration staff, the feed mill partners we work with, we got to make sure that we have a system, as Paul mentioned. There's going to be a ton of VFDs that could potentially be written. and making sure we do it in a way that's efficient is very, very important. We need to make sure it integrates with our current feed ordering program, and then also we want that to be as automatic as possible and obviously electronic to make all those other things occur. We have about 500 finishing, wean to finish nursery sites. We have, like I said, 39 sow farms, and so you can see, you can get pretty inefficient pretty fast if you don't have a good system to accomplish what you're trying to do. We also work with several toll milling partners throughout Iowa, so we don't have our own feed mill, and our flows of pigs might go to every different finishing region. So we might be feeding a flow of pigs at each of those different toll mills. Those toll mills, they got to be able to work with several different clients that might feed out of those mills and have their own ways they want to do things. We got to be able to feed different flows through the different mills, and so our approach as we've kind of moved forward, and I think in some systems there's a ton of value to being able to do the flow model for writing VFDs, but for our approach, feeding with several different toll milling partners in different areas and where you're placing pigs could change, we went down a kind of an approach of being able to do it on a site basis for every lot. And to talk about all those sites and all those feed mills and 5 veterinarians and how are we going to do this efficiently. I know Paul estimated about 10 to 15 minutes for a VFD. I think I took this number from something that was written in one of the guidances at some point in time. They had an estimate on a financial impact. I think they used 0.125 hours per VFD, which would be 8 VFDs an hour. So a little bit, they assume we could do a little quicker, but I agree. I think that that's probably underestimating when you really figure up everybody's time. So if you looked at just an estimation of 2,500 VFDs per year for our system, I think a lot of clinics with different producers, different sites, there'd be a lot more than that even. We could spend, if we could do 8 an hour, we could spend extra 3 months every year of administrative work for veterinarians. Time that we think, could certainly be better spent being out at sites, being in barns, diagnosing problems, working on things that are going to make an impact to our system. We do need to make sure we have oversight, but we got to make sure we do it as efficiently as possible. And I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, and we got to make sure we're doing it the way that works the most efficiently for us. So to kind of go through how we've got things set up to be able to do our VFDs, it starts when the feed budget's made for a group. So when we put together the feed plan for a group, we have a couple people in our feed department who do that every day, and they're putting together feed budgets for groups that are going to fill. And when those are put together, that generates a VFD request to the veterinarian. So as soon as they put that feed budget together, an email comes to the veterinarian who's associated with that site, and that's their responsibility. So I'd get an email that would come to me if it was my site, and it'd have a vet prescription access code on it, and that'd be a unique code for that specific VFD request. And this doesn't show it. We're still a little bit under construction, but there'll be a link there too to hit into the program, and then you'll get this box that'll pop up when you log in, and you put in that access code that you got and click submit. I did all the programming for this too, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. So if you want any tips, my computer programming skills, I can help you out. That was a joke. I can't hardly check my email. But, yeah. Then the other thing that's important for this is we want to make sure it's mobile friendly. So we're working through that a little bit right now too, and I'll have that worked out by January 1st. So this is bringing up on a desktop, but we'd be able to be out in the field with our phone, and an email would come to us. We'd click on the link, enter the code, and then we'd see this. And what this is kind of the request. So you have the information for the site, and it'll know when they set that up how many pigs are there. All the information they need when they set up that feed budget will be all tied into all the stuff that you would need to have on a VFD. So we pull that up. It tells us exactly what the VFD request is for, the medication, the number of pigs, all that, expiration. And then you click. There's a statement here. I'd probably have to read it. I'll get a little closer. It says, you agree that the name and or ID shown above fully accurate and uniquely identifies you in our database. You furthermore agree that your submission of this form via the I accept button shall constitute the execution of this document in exactly the same manner as if you had signed by hand a paper version of the agreement. So basically acknowledgement of electronic signature, and it's you that's signing the document. So you'd click the approval button there, the I accept, and then you hit save, and then as soon as you do that, it generates a VFD for you to utilize. And so that VFD is all tied back into that feed ordering and feed budget process, and then your electronic signature there. Once that's created, it doesn't yet go anywhere. So we've created the VFD, and that VFD then when the feed is actually ordered, so as you set up a feed budget, it would go ahead and create a VFD for, say we have two rations in that feed budget that would require a VFD. It would go ahead and set up 2 VFDs, and when that feed is actually ordered, that VFD that's tied to it would get pushed to the feed mill. It gets stored in our database so that the producer and the veterinarian would have access to it. You can print it if you like for paper copies at the feed mill. You could store it electronically on server or hard drive, or the other thing is we'll have electronic access where they can log in and pull up past VFDs as well. So that VFD is generated off a unique combination of the ration that's ordered, the lot number, so that'd be the site and group that feed is ordered for, the feed mill, and then the medication in there. So if any of those variables change, so for example, if we set up a group, they're going to get fed through a certain feed mill, and something happens, say the mill has a fire and we got to make feed at a different mill, or we decide to change sites because of some health issue that comes up at the last minute, as soon as you go reset up that feed budget, change that feed mill for that budget, it would generate a new VFD, and then you would never push that old VFD to the mill, and it'd have a unique, VFD that would then get pushed along with that feed order. Like I said, that'll all be stored electronically, so you can go in, log in, access past VFDs electronically on the server, or store them to your hard drive, or print them and put them in your paper copies, however you choose to, for the producer, the veterinarian, the feed mill to be able to store those VFDs. So that's kind of the process that we're using to do VFDs in our system. I think probably other production systems may be using, either doing their own type of program that would integrate with their feed system, or utilizing other partners in the industry that have nice, good electronic versions to be able to use. This is something that will just really integrate seamlessly and require, I think, will show and demonstrate and still accomplish all the goals of veterinary oversight and minimize the amount of administrative time that's required to get that done. And then kind of the last thing, I'll switch gears here a little bit and talk a little bit about water medications and kind of veterinary oversight related to that, and a couple things we've done in our system. And I think as I talk about this, some of this is in context of probably what some of the new regulations will end up accomplishing, but a little bit of the approach we've taken right now to kind of look at some of this veterinary oversight. And so right now, prescriptions, we would have a prescription on file for every site where our feeds are where our pigs are located. So veterinarians associated with those sites would have a prescription on file. But in addition to just that prescription, we also have another oversight or a approval process for medications that are ordered, and we'll do that for all of our prescription meds, and then also we've started doing it for more and more non-prescription meds too, to make sure that there's discussions. The veterinarians have approved medication, make sure the discussions are happening between production staff, veterinarians, when we're making medication decisions in the field. Obviously right now there's a lot of medications that don't fall under prescription, but I think everybody, I'd say if you asked 100% of our field supervisors, they would agree that it's always good to have that conversation and have that dialogue when making those decisions. And so, like I said, the approval process really assures that oversight, but then it also assures that we're using drugs when they're really needed. So I think, one thing it's probably helped us a little bit too with is cost control. And for some medications, we haven't seen, this approval process hasn't changed usage levels at all. We've probably been using them properly the whole time. And then for some medications, we probably have had some trends where they're not prescription, that they're not technically needed veterinary oversight. And we put this process in, we've seen that usage trend down, and probably been a good trend, and a trend that has been beneficial for the system, beneficial for the pigs. Doesn't mean that less is better. It just means that doing it the right way is better. So if somebody orders medications for a site, it would generate through our internal website, it would generate an email that would go to the veterinarian. The veterinarian clicks on that link that says visit order approvals at the tools website, and you can see what's been ordered below. And then you click on that link and it would pull up, you log in to the website, and then this is what it pulls up. And you can see when I pulled it up this day, there was a couple approvals that were pending out there. And you can go in, make sure you're delivering the right amount of medication to a site, so we don't have way more. And we've had times where, somebody ordered this much GenGuard or something, you go, that doesn't look right. And then you have a conversation with them and, I was going to run it at this rate rather than that. So, it's been a very good process to help control, curb some of the use, or make sure we're using the right medications for the right scenarios. And then you just go click on if everything looks good, you click on the check mark, or you can change the quantity, or you can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, what are we doing? Why are we using this here? And I think those conversations have always been productive. I really haven't seen where we've had a combative or a bad relationship between staff with this process. It's been pretty good. And just kind of as an example here, like I said, if we looked at all different products, and we probably wouldn't see this same trend. I know we wouldn't. We'd see some pretty even uses across a lot of our products, but for some where we've implemented, we've seen pretty consistent reduction in the use when those conversations have started to occur, and we've been able to say, okay, are we using this right? Are we using it where we think we add value? And so I think that that's a good thing. And like I said, for a lot of medications, we've seen that still remain very flat. We've continued to do it probably judiciously in the way we would want to do it with the veterinary oversight. And I think that this type of stuff will come more and more with more prescription use in antibiotics. Some of these trends, there's a lot more of these discussions will be had, and I think that's probably a good thing for the industry.